Hey, welcome to the Strong Roots podcast. My name is Kristen Hill, and we are so excited that you're tuning in today. Our prayer is that you would move one step closer to Jesus through this series. So go ahead and check out this next episode. Hey, Strong Roots, we are in our final episode in our friendship season, and today we are talking about boundaries. And Pastor John is going to talk about this because he is so good at this. I feel like he establishes boundaries right away. Therefore, they don't have to be put up later in the relationship when it's harder to do. So, Pastor John, I want to ask you, what have you learned about setting boundaries in friendships and relationships in general?
And this is so big, I think that you need to set the boundaries in your mind ahead of time and then define them for the team. And this is such a big deal because it is really painful to set a boundary once the game's already started,
Absolutely.
right? You don't want to change the rules in the middle of the game. You don't want to set a boundary in the middle of the relationship. That hurts. But if you define it ahead of time, the cost is almost nothing. Right? And so what I do is I visualize the win for what any relationship is going to look like. If I'm in a counseling session, it is really painful in the middle for me to say, hey, I only have 10 minutes left, and I know your world's burning to the ground, but if I'm late, my wife is going to burn my world to the ground, and then we'll have two worlds on fire, so I'll see you later. Like, that's hurtful.
Right.
But if I say, hey, before we get into this conversation, I have exactly 45 minutes.
Right.
And I cannot go beyond that. And I want you to know that and mean it right. And that's just setting a boundary ahead of time. And by doing it ahead of time, that's way less painful than somebody in tears like, and then I, it's like, oh my gosh, like that's really helpful. So that's been a big deal, is define the win ahead of time. Visualize what you want the relationship to look like. Define the win for everybody, just so everybody knows we're all here. We're having an awesome time at the lake. Here's what I imagine we're going to do. If I have a group of friends over to the lake, I'll say, hey, it's going to be a great day. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to, mess around with the boat till this time. Then we'll have free swimming time at this time. Then we're going to eat dinner. And after dinner, we'll probably have a little bonfire with some s'mores and whatever else, followed by an evening boat ride. That's the whole thing. It's already defined. Everybody knows what it is. And I say, hey, does anybody have scheduling issues with that I need to accommodate? If somebody's leaving early or late, boom, boundary set. And I know everybody's going to be out of there by 9 o'clock because I've already kind of defined, okay, night's over. All the events are done. I've set a boundary, and I don't have to ask anybody to leave because I'm tired. You know what I mean? Like, it's all good.
So you gave two examples about in a group setting. How does this look like in a one-on-one setting? Do you have any examples?
Like I said, I mean, the boundaries with that counseling session or with if I'm meeting somebody out for lunch or whatever, like, hey, I'm excited to spend this time with you. Like, I have to leave at this time. If there's going to be a boundary on that, that's what I say. Like, we're going to leave at this time.
I even see this in a life group setting.
Oh, yeah.
Where before we even open up discussion, you will say, or you've coached me to say, hey, we're not going to talk over each other. We are going to go through this fast. So I want everyone to go around and say it under 30 seconds, their answer if we're going around in a circle.
Oh, yeah.
Or we're not going to overshare. This is not it's not a counseling session. This is a group discussion. So if you want to talk one-on-one, I would love to talk to you about your deeper issues or whatever, but this is not the time or place to do that. And just setting the table so that it's the worst when somebody is opening up their heart and talking about XYZ and the other 15 people in the room are like, and then trying to erect that boundary. It just does not feel good.
That's so important in life group conversations to do that ahead of time. And if you do it mid group, once you let the horses out of the gates and you haven't said, if you overshare or if you tell someone, because I don't like it, it's called crosstalk, but I don't like it when someone shares this thing about their life and then everybody around the group like tries to correct them and tell them, well, here's what you can do. It's like, oh my goodness, like, stop, but if you erect that boundary ahead of time, you're good to go. And I think it just makes it a whole lot better. But another way we do this, and this is big, I used to get a lot of anxiety about having people over to the house because it'd be like, sometimes people stay until 10 o'clock, like thinking, hey, we're going to start games and whatever else. And I'm like reading etiquette online about like, how do you end the night, whatever. And I mean, you can send nonverbal things, like, well, it's getting late, got to hit the old dusty trail or whatever. But what I recognize now is if we invite someone over, say, hey, love to have you over for dinner, 5:30, typically we start getting the kids ready at, 7:15. So it'll be awesome, real quick, like, excited to see you. And we're already setting boundaries on what that's going to look like beforehand, right? Or if somebody's asked for a counseling session with me, and this is a big one in my life, they'll be like, hey, and so I like this, it's kind of be a regular thing. And I'll tell them, no, like they're trying to ask for a bunch of land, and I'll set a boundary saying, you know what, I'm not qualified to do that. Or I'm not able to do that at this juncture in my life. As much as I'd love to, I can give you 2 meetings or 2 whatever. And that's just setting a boundary. Because so often when we don't set boundaries,
right,
we end up in this mutually unsatisfying place. Because we, as much as we try hard not to, are sending all these nonverbal cues that we're not happy. Yep. And the person we're talking with is like, ouch, like they don't like me very much. I feel rejected and da-da-da-da-da. And it's just a nasty quagmire of grossness. But to say ahead of time, hey, here is what it's going to be. I'm setting expectations. I even do this in sermons, right? I say, what am I going to do? I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to look at some Bible, and I'm going to make some points. What am I doing? I'm setting boundaries on what this is going to be so everybody knows ahead of time. It feels better for everybody.
Right. Well, you are really good at this.
Mm-hmm.
So I am curious, has there been a time where you haven't established proper boundaries ahead of time? And where do you go from there? I feel like there are many people who are listening who are like, I've already failed. How do you put boundaries up when you've already started something or started a pattern?
I think one of the biggest times I can think of in my life, I was a lonely youth director in Texas with no family. People would have me over for dinner, and I would stay too long because I was lonely, And I realized, wow, like I'm overstaying my welcome. Like I need to put boundaries in place. And so I'll say, hey, excited to come over for dinner tonight. Want to honor your time. What time do you typically get the kids in bed, or what time do you need to start working on homework? Basically for them to set because you can ask for a boundary too.
That's good.
Because here's what I want. Like, hey, I'd hang out till 10 o'clock and play Parcheesi or whatever else. But I'm asking them so that I can, meet their best desires too. And if you're around people who don't set boundaries, ask for them. What would be best for you in here? I just want to make sure that you get what you want. I get what I want. Like, what would your most desire be? And I found that to be a really good thing too, if I'm on the other side of the coin. So.
Is there a wrong way to set boundaries?
Yeah, meanly. For sure. Meanly, too aggressively. And that interpersonal art, I have a good friend in my life who probably asks for things and sets boundaries way too harshly. And there's, lots of people who are hurt by that. And, great person, great intentions, godly person.
Right.
But you have to set boundaries in a way that respects and dignifies people. And I think that's a big deal, willing to maybe make some compromises in those sometimes, knowing what you're willing to compromise on and what hills you're going to die on.
Right.
For boundaries are a big deal, but always really dignify the person and be humble. When you're setting about hey, I'm so grateful for your time. You want to allow people to save face as much as possible when you set boundaries. And I'm coming in all hard here. All of my advice in this podcast that I've given up to this point, please just go back and edit in this here. Dignify people when you set boundaries.
Yeah.
If you're texting boundaries, use emojis. It costs you so little,
right.
so little to just send an emoji there, laughy face. I like to use, what are they called? GIFs? Giphies? Jiffies? I don't know. GIFs. I download a little app on my phone that lets me send those. And they're really corny, and I get that they're middle-aged man things. But I do it simply to show people that they matter and that this is lighthearted and I'm not mad. When you set a boundary. And a lot of my boundaries happen through text message because I'm already defining ahead of time what the interaction is going to look like. But that's a big deal. Yeah.
So because you are a Christian, how has God modeled boundaries for us?
I think super effectively through defining what sin is.
Correct.
He tells us super clearly in the Bible what sin is. And why is he doing that? Because he's saying, hey, this is what I want from you guys because this is what I like. Mm-hmm. But also, this is what you're going to like. Sin is sin because it hurts relationships. Sin is also sin because it offends a holy God. And it's both of those reasons.
Right.
And it's just a beautiful relational thing. That girl was a great question. That was a great question. She knows what she's doing. She knew the answer. Golly, what a leader. What a great friend. Oh, my goodness. She's got it all. Well done. As we come to the end of this series, I would love for you to talk about, because you are a much different leader than I am. Mm-hmm. You lead with likability. I lead with respect. But what do you do to set healthy boundaries in conversations with people?
Oh, I feel like you said it. And I feel like a lot of what I learned was from you, but are you asking besides before going into the conversation?
Is there anything that you'd add to what I said?
I think I just want to add how right on you are.
Girl, say it again. What a great marriage.
But I love that you included, what do they want it to look like? Because sometimes Sometimes my boundaries are hard and they have to be because we have 4 kids and they have a bedtime. Like, as much as I'd like to not have this boundary, I can't. But there are boundaries that have wiggle room. Like this, like if my boundary, even especially in marriage, like this is what I want this to look like. And if you want it to look like this, it's good to hear the other person out because there can be compromises with some boundaries. Yes, again, there are some hard boundaries that like, I'm sorry, I can't. But I think just being open to hearing the desire of the other person and being able to compromise when you're able to is huge in friendship.
Yeah, I'll close with this challenge. I think that, or this admonition, I guess, but I do think that boundaries make for much better friendships.
Oh, yes.
And I think so often, like a gift that I can give and that Kristen has learned to give, I give it a little more naturally. She's learned to give it though, is just giving structure to hangouts. Like so often, you just show up and it's like, there's a half-eaten bag of chips and the whatever and a this and that. And that's how the single guys do it. And I just realized I can give the gift of structure and planning to many different situations, and it's good. And I think that's a great way to be a great friend. And I really want to encourage you. So for the next time that you pursue somebody, because we've just talked about how to pursue people as well, what can you do to set healthy definitions about what success is going to look like there? And I'd really love for you to think about that, to apply what we've taught.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us for this friendship season. If you are watching just this one for the first time, go back. We have hit all sorts of awesome topics. We would love for you to listen to it all. But thank you for joining us, and I cannot wait to catch you next season. Bye. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on our other social media platforms. We don't want you to miss out on any future content. Thank you so much again, guys. I hope you have a great day. And I want you to know I am personally praying that your roots stay strong.